Carolyn Dube here. For this month's colorful jelly print party, I'm playing around with the 4-inch round jelly plate. And this started out with me just trying to get to know the jelly plate. I haven't been playing around with these little ones very long, and I have to say they're a whole lot of fun to play with. But as I started playing, there was this character that showed up. This guy, and you'll see him go from, and truly there was no plan for it, and then you can see where he shows up. And I don't have a name for this little guy, and he needs a name. So I'd love it in the comments after you're done watching the video if you'd give me your idea for what would be a good name for this little guy. Well, now take a look at the video and see how he came from beginning to end. I'm using the 4-inch round jelly plate here, and I've got DecoArt's fluid acrylics. I have no idea where I'm going with this as I start. I just know I wanted to put something round onto this art journal page. And this is just a little 5x8 Canon mixed media art journal. Multi-purpose, handles everything I seem to throw at it. And so I just stuck this little 4-inch jelly plate down right there. But notice I didn't lift it up, because I'm going to use that round jelly plate left on there to act as the mask to protect the line or the integrity of my yellow as I put the teal around it. And this is because I love to have boatloads of color on something, which, well, you already know that if you've seen more than 1 or 2 of my videos, but it allowed me to do it and have the nice crisp line between the circle and the background without me having to worry about trying to make something very precise. And you can tell from my painting here, precision is not my strong suit with this. It's just kind of smeared around and see what happens. And again, at this point, I really have no plan of what I'm going to do other than start putting some colors down. Well, at this point, I decided to actually just hold this cute little jelly plate right in my hand and use that brayer just to grab some paint off my palette. Well, along the way, what happens is I picked up all sorts of colors that I had no desire to actually pick up and created what might be one of my ickiest color combinations ever on that little jelly plate. So I'm not actually putting it on the journal. I'm just going to put it on some scrap paper over there, and by golly, it really was kind of ugly. So I really recommend that you put the jelly plate flat on a surface when you apply the color, which, you know, really if I thought about it, would have come to that conclusion, but I was just so excited to have that little thing in my hand, I just couldn't stop myself. But now I've got more of the color that I was going for without other weird colors mixed in with it. And now I'm going to put it onto my page. And again, as I put this down, I don't have a plan in mind. And the reason why it's such a big deal that I don't have a plan in mind is pretty soon after I do this, I start to see something. And you're probably expecting me to pick the jelly plate up, because usually that's how it happens. You put it down and then you pick it up and leave the paint behind. But I'm leaving it there so that I can use it as a guide as I add more color around it, just like what I did before, but this time the colors are building up on top of each other. And I am using that incredible precision that I use with anything. So now when I lift that up, because it was hanging off the edge, there's a little part of it where I've still got some color on that round jelly plate. And I keep looking at that and I'm thinking, I'm going to put that right on top of the yellow. Once I put it there, it solidifies what I'd started to see, and now I most definitely am seeing it. Well, what did I see? I see a little kid. I see a head and a body, and I totally need to connect them, because if you've got a head and a body, a neck to connect them is really kind of handy. So in my very imprecise way, I'm going to give him a neck that's ever growing and use that orange to outline the body. Now this part all seemed fine to me and I keep fiddling with it, but when I go onto the face, what was going through my head was absolutely hilarious. I'm like, okay, now what kind of eye am I going to draw? I'm just going to give him a dot eye. And they're like, no, not that. And I keep adding more and more paint to it. At the rate I was going, these eyes were going to be bigger than his whole head if I didn't stop at some point soon. Well, we've got the eyes. Now we need to give this guy a mouth, and he's getting this cute little itty bitty mouth. As I looked at him though, I still wasn't completely happy. That orange around the body just wasn't bright enough for me. So I brought in some white to lighten up that orange. And of course, I'm not being very precise with my circles, so I decided to use that jelly plate again. And I didn't make sure that it was stuck down all the way. Oops! There's an outstanding opportunity presenting suddenly. So those little bits of paint that ran, I'm just using a Q-tip and water to pull them up. And then I started using that Q-tip and water all around the orange, and I really liked what it did to it. Once again, an oops really is an opportunity. And I even gave him a little more in the eyeballs with it. Well, I just couldn't stop playing with this little guy, which, by the way, I haven't figured out a good name for him yet. But I wanted to put some words stenciled behind him. So I'm going to use my wall of word stencil here, and this time, since I'm actually going to stencil paint through it, I actually want the words facing the correct direction so that they are legible or readable right now. So what I'm doing is putting the words where I want them. I'm actually trying to think about which words I want, which is really kind of silly because I'm not really going to read them. But anyway, so once I've got it where I want it, then I'm going to put my jelly plate right on top of the head. So it's going to act as a mask for the head so that when I come in and start stenciling, I'm stenciling right around it. I don't have to worry about masking anything off. The jelly plate is going to do that for me. So I'm going to bring out some white fluid acrylic. This one's from Deco Arts. And when I put my sponge in it, here's the trick though when using a fluid paint. It's fluid, it means it's really runny. If I use a lot of it, I'm going to get sort of a really messy, sloppy look. But if I don't use enough, it won't show up. So I'm peeking and checking, and it's showing up on one side, but not on the other. So that's telling me that I need to use a little more paint, but if I go too heavy with the paint, I do run the risk of it looking, the paint running underneath the words. And for some reason, I don't feel like I want that today, so I'm actually going very, very gently. Bonus of the jelly plate there, holding it in place. What that's doing is making it so the stencil stays in place without me having to worry about keeping it exactly where it should be. And it allows me to peek and look at things a little more easily. See, I had a little more paint on it there because I was getting impatient. So the words aren't going to be quite as crisp over there. And guess what? You know what I'm going to call that? That's just an oops. It's an outstanding opportunity presenting suddenly. And as I'm doing this, every single word is not going to stencil. Some of them will, some of them won't. And that's going to give it a very subtle kind of look to the background. I didn't want it fully covered. And which is why I think it's so funny that I was actually trying to say, I want these words right there. Now I did the head, but now I'm going to come down and work where the body is. So I'm going to move that jelly plate yet again, and that's going to act as my mask down there. Now I don't have a mask on his neck, and apparently I think it would be, high crime if I actually put a word across his neck. So I'm trying to be careful and mindful of that. Although really, I don't think he'd mind at all, but that's just between you and me. Now, when I think I've got this the way I want it, I'm also going to cheat another way. I'm going to hold my hand right there. So I'm holding the stencil, and then I can peek and look and see if it's the way I like. And it is. Very, very happy with how he's turned out so far. And now I want to give him some sort of buttons down his shirt. So I'm going to bring in Maria Maguire's Doodle It Bigger stencil and just use some of the circles from that. And I'm going to be all smart, and I want to use the teal color, and I'm going to put it on there, and it's going to look great, and it's going to pop right against that. And wait till you see once I bring in that cosmetic sponge and I put it on there, and I'm really careful, and it doesn't even show up. It just was way too transparent for this, or translucent. So I added a little bit of white to it, and now it's going to be more opaque and stand out. So now my little guy is going to have 3 buttons going down the front of him, and I feel like he might be done. But then I decided, no, maybe he's not done. He needs a little more play to him, so I brought in a watercolor crayon. And this is just really a soft white crayon so that I can add a little pop to some of the edges and the lines and get some of that kid feeling to it, as if this thing didn't have enough of a kid feel to it already. Well, I'm totally not sure what to name this guy, so if you've got an idea for what would be a good name for him, I'd love it if you'd leave it down in the comments, either here on YouTube or over on my blog or wherever you're seeing this video, because he needs a really good name. Well, thanks for joining me for this month's Colorful Jelly Print Party. If you've enjoyed this video and like to see more of what I do, head on over to my blog at acolorfuljourney.com, where I have all the other colorful jelly print parties, as well as all sorts of other things, including my newsletter that has a free downloadable video waiting for you. Thanks for being a part of this colorful journey.